Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. We are back with a new Sade Live. Today, our main focus is going to be Solo, a Star Wars story, and we're going to dive into other things and George's vision and such. Also, there is a tsunami advisory in my area, so I will be continuously checking my computer to make sure that I don't need to leave. But yeah. Anyways, so without further ado, I've watched Solo a lot. I've seen it a lot. I don't know how many times I've seen it a lot. Not as much as George's movies, obviously, but I have seen it a lot. I've enjoyed Solo a lot. Typically just because it's really fun. It's the best looking Star Wars movie cinematography wise and lighting wise and everything. Um, the blaster fights are really good. The visuals are amazing. Um, I like Han. He's an awesome character. Seeing Maul is cool. It's a great watch. When you're just trying to watch some fun Star Wars, and it feels like George's movies in terms of pacing and the kind of dialogue and humor and all that kind of stuff is very much like George's Star Wars. In that way, which is really really cool. Um, but it's grown on me, and every time I've watched it's just gotten better. I don't know what it is, but I used to just not really study it because I'd only study 1 through 6. And I studied The Last Jedi, of course, because it was, I wanted to know what the hell went wrong. And I've studied, the other sequels, so I've studied that trilogy, but it's just gotten worse the more I've dug into it, and now I'm done. I've been done with that for years. So now I'm at a point where, I've dug into Rogue One, obviously, and Rogue One was obviously a great movie, really, really well made story, feels Star Warsy. It's great. But then there's Solo, and it gives off this totally different tone. And it just feels like George Star Wars. I think I know what it is. It doesn't destroy any of the characters. It progresses Han Solo, and um it feels like Star Wars. The atmosphere, the tone, the world, like just everything feels like Star Wars. And you have returning characters, which helps always. You don't need returning characters for something to feel like Star Wars, but that obviously helps. So it just feels very in the Star Wars universe. And it never really rips me out, and it never really feels corporate. It feels like real Star Wars to me. Um, and I've always loved this movies, even since it came out. I've been a day one Solo fan. You know, I've thought it was really well done. George likes this movie, from what I've heard. He actually went to the premiere, and he didn't go to the premiere of The Last Jedi or The Rise of Skywalker or Rogue One. He liked Rogue One too, but he didn't go to the premiere because that was too soon after the whole Force Awakens mess. But he went to the Solo premiere because he believed in it and thought it was a good film. And I think that's also something important to think of, is that he did really enjoy that film from what I've heard and seen online. And yeah, that's a big piece too. So just knowing that George kind of has given it a thumbs up. But for me, this kind of digs into characters that I've connected to. There's throughout different periods of my life, I've connected with different characters. I've connected with Luke. I've connected with Anakin. Uh, those are really the main two, to be honest. There's times I connected with like the Mandalorian, um, and times I've connected with when I was really young, Obi-Wan. You know, all very different characters, right? But it shows you my kind of like mental spiritual growth throughout life, and I guess roller coaster throughout life. And now it's more Han Solo, to be honest. That's really where I am. And I feel like that's really who I am, is the other ones are like phases, but this feels like more accurate. It just feels more right. Like, sure, I'm not a living, walking carbon copy of Han Solo, but in terms of like, there's just aspects of his character that I relate to. I think there's a lot, and a lot of people just don't understand that there's people out there who do relate to Han Solo and who do relate to Tony Stark and who do relate to all these characters that are perceived as like these unrelatable, up there, just kind of not feasible characters, and it's not true. Is there's very much people out there like myself who find these characters to be their Luke Skywalker, to be their Spider-Man, you know and that's what he is to me, and that's mainly because of this movie. And I saw him as like a young kid, like I am, just you know hoping to be among the stars and going on adventures and living a crazy life, that's never redundant or boring, or he's always out doing something crazy, and that's me, and that was me, and it's still me, and um it's almost like Luke Binary Sunset, but it's different. It's like Han actually has that ability. He's never lived a life that's boring or straightforward. He's always been kind of all over the place. And there's just that, and the way he responds to certain things, the way he responds to you know people going after him, the way he gets out of situations, his kind of humor, his sarcastic humor. Like, there's all these things that I've just really been able to look at and go, what the hell? Like, that's me. Or even his like love life almost is like, you know, kind of like the way he goes about it is similar to me too. So there's lots of things about Han that I've just connected with, and so I'm going to go over his kind of arc and then how it ties over to the original trilogy, because in A New Hope, he's just cynical and self-serving, and he just kind of doesn't like people. He asks Chewie and he's like, I'm good. And he just thinks everyone else is an idiot and everyone else is just a burden and, unwise and whatever. And that's a part of his character that in recent years I have connected with. And that's what's not necessarily good, and there's times you connect with bad aspects of a character that you need to grow from, and it's ways for you to see yourself, when you're able to relate to characters and those stages. And it's like, well, you have to grow past that. And that's Han's whole arc in the original trilogy, is to be less cynical. By the time you get to Return of the Jedi, he cares about the cause and he cares about a bunch of people, and it's like totally juxtaposes what was in 4. And yeah, I've been there. I've been, because you're just you go through life and you see how all these people in life are just stupid, and there are a lot of really dumb, illogical, brainwashed, backstabbing idiots in the world. There are a lot, right? Especially if they're those like non-religious weird types, right? There's lots of those out there. And even religious people, tons of religious people who are backstabbers, and it's very hard to find actual good real people in the world. And that's Han in 4. He thinks that way, and he's like, you know what? It's better if I just stick with me and Chewie, who I know I can trust, and not even try to deal with anyone else, and just live my life this way, because everyone else will just turn against me, or take advantage of me or whatever, like these are all things that he's thinking in 4. And then he is around Luke, around Obi-Wan, around Leia and everything, and he starts to realize that these people aren't those idiots he thought they were at first, and they weren't these useless life forms that he thought they were. That's why he comes back and, I think really saves the day in A New Hope, where if Han didn't show up, Luke would have been blasted. There's no way that he would have made it in time. That was all Han, really. So, yeah. Anyways, so we start out in Solo, and he's this idealistic kid who's determined to escape the oppressive world of Corellia, and he thinks that once he escapes, the galaxy will be great, and it will be sunshine and rainbows, and he's this hopeful, naive, and deeply loyal child, and his idealism just kind of blinds him to the realities of the vast galaxy. It's like, no, not everywhere. The Empire's all over the place. Crime is all over the place, right? Just getting off one planet isn't going to solve all your problems. And that's what we see at the beginning of the movie, is he's like, oh, I'm going to get off Corellia and then we'll have this sweet life. And then he quickly learns, no, like that's not true, right? Because he's flown out, he leaves and joins the Empire, and he thinks, oh, well, I'll fight for what's right. And then he sees the brutality of the Empire and then tries to escape that, and then is with Beckett, and they're weird with him, right? So he's like learning, this is not what I thought it was, right? Through the whole movie, he's like, this is not the paradise that I thought I'd be in. So, this kind of leans into the betrayal aspect, because Han at first is loyal to everyone. To the people he cares about, he's 100% loyal to. He never questions any of their actions. He thinks they're just like fine. But then what happens? Beckett tells Han, assume everyone will betray you, right? He's like, everyone will betray you. Don't trust anybody, right? And Han's like, okay, whatever, you old man. He just thinks it's old man fart, stupid logic. But then what happens? Beckett, who, again, Han is very loyal to, gets a close bond to, connects with, he even calls Beckett a partner before Beckett goes off and betrays him, right? And what happens? He gives Beckett all this information because he's like, oh, Beckett would never do that. I know. I'll just let him leave because we're good friends, whatever. What happens? He sells them out to Dryden Voss and Crimson Dawn. Han is shocked. Han is horrified. He hates that Beckett's point was proven. That even the people you think would never betray you will. And that's exactly what happened. He was absolutely betrayed by Beckett. And not only that, Beckett warned Han about Kira probably 7 times throughout the movie. You do not want to be near this person. You don't know what she's done. You don't know what she's a part of. Then Kira does this weird thing where she puts the sword to Han and says all this shit, but it's really talking to Dryden, but it feels really weird and it's uncomfortable. But what does Han do? He brushes it off because he has feelings for her. So he brushes off all these just facts and weird things, that little bits that she's doing, and he's just like, oh, it's fine, it's fine, it's fine. Then what? She's like, I'll be right behind you. He leaves, thinking she's going to be right behind him. And then she joins Darth Maul and jets off and leaves him there. She leaves him. And Han's chased her all over the galaxy, and she still leaves him. What happens again? Beckett's proven right again. So now Han, at this point, doesn't trust anybody, because he's had the love of his life and one of his, really only business partners betray him and backstab him. So now he's like, Chewie's all I have, and they're the two, I guess, buddies, and everyone else around them is just like a risk, and also Lando turned on him too. He was like with them, he was going to help them. And then what happens? He's pissed that, the Falcon got damaged and he leaves them. So like literally everybody betrays Han Solo. And from those experiences alone, Han is no longer that idealistic, happy-go-lucky, trusting guy anymore. Now he is turning into that smuggler, cynical kind of New Hope Han with the chip on his shoulder and the cockiness and everything. Like, all that's starting to, come into play because everyone just threw him under the bus. So, next is, despite, his cynicism growing, right? That doesn't make Han a terrible person. This doesn't make him a bad guy or whatever. He's been through shit and he has to work through the shit. That's, everyone goes through stuff like that and they have to change, but at Han's heart, he's a good person. And Kira actually says this, and of course Han is being Han and he's like, no, I'm a terrible person. Obviously he's not, but yeah, so basically this guy has the opportunity to just give the coaxium to Enfys Nest and get paid and leave. But he sees this group of people who has been brutalized and lived under fear and lost their tongues and lost a lot of their people and their culture from Crimson Dawn. This very bad group of people has been controlling them and being the authority for them. How does that connect to Han? That connects to Han because he was a scrum rat. He was ruled by a crime syndicate. So he knew what that was like and was like, I cannot let these people deal with that. So he goes out of his way, risking his life, risking everyone's life to protect these people, And Han gives the coaxium to Enfys instead of selling it for profit, which shows that when it comes to those critical moments, he will choose his heart over, the selfish thing to do. We see this in A New Hope too, when he flies in and saves Luke. Or in Empire, where he gets, I don't know, frozen. I'd say that was a self-sacrificial moment. Like there's tons of moments like this with him where you see him just kind of, do the right thing. And that even, when survival and doing the right thing are at odds, he has to navigate the tension and figure out what he needs to do. And then before this, Han would often resort to like violence or any kind of like self-defense as an absolute last resort. That would never be a thing he'd just go to immediately, right? When Beckett sold him out to the Imperials at the beginning, before Beckett even trusted him, Han didn't go beat him up or like didn't kill him and take his stuff and take his ship. Han was negotiating, he was kind, he wanted to join the crew, whatever. Then what happens? After all this betrayal and Beckett, he sees Beckett, be weird with his gun, put his finger on the trigger, Han just shoots. Because he's like, I have to protect myself. I've given you a chance and you're about to kill me, so I got to do what I got to do. So that furthers, that, I guess, part of Han, where he's no longer bound by sentiment, and he's practical and decisive, and he learns to act before, others can hurt him, and that's what he's come to because of all the things he's gotten, to deal with. So by the end of the movie, Han's hardened and he's self-reliant, and he rejects joining the rebellion because, he it's not his thing, he is a smuggler at the end of the day. And but still he's a good soul, he's never going to support something that's evil or wrong. But at the same time, he has to find for himself because he's he's Han Solo. But yeah, he's like a loner who avoids like joining causes but is still capable of heroism. Like that's really what it is. So Solo shows that Han begins as someone who wants to be good but is forced into a world that punishes idealism. His arc is gradually hardening, but not a complete corruption. Underneath the smuggler persona lies a decent man who still believes in something, which is what makes his redemption arc in the original trilogy so powerful. So it's like, that idealistic Han never fully gets killed. It's never fully gone. But, but through all the trauma and stuff he has gone through, he does get this persona, of a smuggler, And I think that that's what really makes his original trilogy arc even more powerful, is that he's gone through all this and he forces himself, even after all this, after almost getting killed, being betrayed by a lover, he gets back to being a pure soul, who believes in a cause, believes in good fully, doesn't talk trash about the Force, doesn't, like he's fallen into the light completely, and he's not that like kind of shifting person on the spectrum. He's now all the way good by the end of Jedi, So Han is a really, really cool character. And it's just one that some of us are able to relate to, where I've been through shit that's made me not trust anyone. I've been backstabbed multiple times, and that's harmed my way of trusting people. And I have had a couple friends that I've just stuck with and ignored everyone else and not talked to anyone else because I think that they're all going to do the same, And I have gotten this kind of smuggler attitude, and this is stuff that I've actually dealt with, but deep and down inside I am still good. I'm never going to join a cause or this or that, but at the end of the day I'm going to do what's right, just I don't trust any group of people or any of that enough to join a cause, right? Like that's not, it's like Jesus and me, and that's like, and then I have my like couple few friends, and that's like how it is. That's how I kind of roll. But I am starting to work through that a little bit, I feel. And at the end of the day, Han is still Han. He's still gonna have that kind of sarcastic smuggler attitude, which I definitely have now. Never used to have, but it kind of developed. I don't know how or why. It wasn't because I was trying to be on Solo. I just figured out. I was like, what the hell? We act the same in this situation or whatever. But it's just kind of happened, which is weird, because I never used to like connect with Han at all. When I was young, it was always Luke Skywalker. And then when I hit like 14, something really bad happened, and I was like in my Anakin phase, and I was really like not concerned, but devastated, taken back by something, and that was weird. And then I worked through that, and something other shit happened, and then now I'm in my, what I like to call Han Solo phase. But I don't think it's really a phase. This really just seems like kind of how I am as a person, which is a good thing, that I'm resourceful, and I am true to myself, and I don't pledge allegiance to anything other than really the good, other than Jesus. I don't pledge myself to anything else, anything or anyone else. I don't, I think for myself in a way, and I do what I need to do. I'm not some super self-sacrificial guy like, oh, I'm gonna go fucking sit on top of a grenade, I'll just throw it the other direction away from people. right? Or as Tony Stark once said, I'll cut the wire instead of laying on it. You know, like that's how I am, you know, where it's like we could save all of us and I wouldn't be blown to bits, right? That's kind of how I am. So, you know, Solo for me has been a really it's a really personal film. You know, where a lot of people it's like Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse is a really personal film for them, or I don't know, Spider-Man seems to be the one that everyone has connected with and I just never have, to be honest with you. I never have. You know, I like Spider-Man. I kind of I like the idea of his character. I just don't connect with him personally, you know, but I'm trying to think of other ones where half the people who say they relate to Anakin Skywalker don't even relate to Anakin Skywalker. They just think that it makes them cool, and it's like, no, you don't. What part of you is Anakin? Like some idiot was like, oh, it's because of his turn to the dark side. Like, ooh, you're so edgy. Oh my gosh. It's like, okay, bro. Okay, yeah. Fuck, please. Anyways, yeah. So like, there's a multitude of and that's what's so special about Star Wars and George's vision is that um you know, there's so many characters that you're able to see yourself in, you know, that you're really to like, and I think that's important for movies is not only to have engaging stories that tell meaningful messages, whatever, but you also have someone, you can also feel like you're there and you feel like this could be me. It adds this level of immersion and to the experience of watching the film. I feel like that really helps you connect with it easier, you know, if you're able to really see yourself there. Um or at least look up to a character there. Like, I don't know, Superman or whatever. I think Superman is way too optimistic to where I think that's one of his faults, to be honest, is he doesn't know when he needs to do what he needs to do, you know. He's just very like everything will be happy go lucky and everything will be okay. And it's like, well, sometimes you gotta, like Han, you know, take the shot. There's times in life where you gotta just do something that feels a little yucky, but know you're doing it for the greater good of things. You know, not to be this evil guy who does something horrible, but there's little moments where you gotta just do what you gotta do, you know, and they suck, you know, and we see Han feel that way where he shoots Beckett and then he realizes like, wait, this was my guy, but you know, I had to do what I had to do. And he went over and he didn't just leave Beckett there to die. He was like trying to comfort him in death. And, you know, like there are just times like that where, you know, not normally that intense or whatever, but times where you need to do the right thing. And sometimes doing the right thing requires a little bit of I guess stuff that you might be consider wrong or whatever the fuck, you know. So I think that's just good to keep in mind. But yeah, so that's like Han's arc in Solo and how I've really connected with Han throughout that movie and seen myself in him throughout that movie. And really throughout Star Wars now, which is really incredible, you know, and that there's really always a Star Wars character for you to connect with, which I think is cool. Um, you know, and then in Marvel, it's like Iron Man, Tony Stark. I've really always had a piece of me that's connected to him, you know, throughout my whole life. But yeah, films are cool. Characters are very cool, you know, and they're important. I feel like because having someone to be like, well, they've gone through this and they've gotten through it, you know, and then you going through a similar thing and you're like, well, I know I can get through this because he's been through it already. And he's like me. He thinks like me, he acts like me, and he got through it, so I can get through it, right? It's a way of like of I guess giving you hope and helping you go forward and make the right decisions and everything, you know, and none of that can be done without a spiritual guide either. Without Jesus, you can't make those leaps in your character, you know, in your character arc, which everyone has, and character arc at the end of the day. Um, God's the only one who can help you make those positive arc shifts, and making you who you will be as an adult and even beyond when you are an adult and you go through things and change and whatever. And that's the cool thing about being human is you're constantly changing as a person. Um, and it's cool to see, you know, I guess another person go through similar things as you in your favorite movies ever. That's a cool little extra thing to have. Um, yeah, so I mean, do I idolize a character or anything? No, because that's idolatry, and I'm a Christian, and being good and believing in Jesus is what's matters number one. But if I conveniently relate to Han or whatever, then so be it. Like that's just a cool extra thing. So yeah, that's that. I think that's pretty cool. But besides even the serious stuff, right? But like the deep whatever things that Solo presents. And I didn't even get into the whole crime syndicate and Kira and Lando and all that. Goodness gracious. Or even Beckett and his character. Um, and how Beckett is a juxtaposed version of Han. He's the one character who never healed from being betrayed and backstabbed. He just further deep and became isolated in his shell, and yeah, so without getting into that, moving on to the just general stuff about Solo. I mean, the soundtrack is the best soundtrack Disney Star Wars has put out. Easily, easily. You have John Williams composing the theme, and then obviously then influencing the rest of the score, and then John Powell, who's a legend in film scoring, who went through the rest of it and adapted the theme and did other scores. It's just perfect. The score is perfect throughout the entire movie, and it's like one of those soundtracks you can listen from start to finish and love every track. And there's themes for different characters, and there's motifs, and there's original trilogy themes that are brought back at like the perfect moment, and other John Williams stuff, right? It's awesome. And then honestly, dude, that Kessel Run sequence is one of the coolest sequences in modern day Star Wars. Like honestly, that won't age, I don't think, ever, because it just looks like, I'm not even talking about the way that was written and composed and choreographed, but I'm just talking purely about how it looks too. That it looks like it's timeless. Like Solo looks so good that it won't age like at all. I think that we're at a point now where I just don't think that movie will age whatsoever. Like how more realistic could you get looking wise than Solo, bro? Like you can't. Like that is, there's no CG in that film that's weird. It all looks physical and real, even when it's digital, which I find to be really, really impressive. And it shows how much, I guess, CG has developed since, when George created the digital side of things during the prequels, and now we're at a point where like Solo looks better than 95% of the movies released right now, right? It's like that it shows a progression, I guess, of visual effects, and technology since, the last real Star Wars movies, which was, the prequels. So, yeah, that alone, dude, it's eye candy. Every shot of that movie is eye candy. And then just, I mean, all the references, right? Like Aura Singh and Batu, and it's like all those little Sabak, the Hans dice, like all those tiny little bits, Tatooine, Jabba the Hutt. It's like just pieces of dialogue. And this was in Andor season 2 also, where they're just talking about things, right? Like that just alone sets it in the world and the current events of things even more than like if none of that were mentioned. You know, it makes it feel connected even more than it would have been if none of that were there, which again I find to be really cool. Yeah, like that, dude. I remember in the theaters hearing them say Batu. And I was like, what? That's the new, because at the time it wasn't open yet. It was still a year until Galaxy's Edge was open, but we knew it was called Batu and we knew like little things. And I was like, oh shoot, that's already in existence, right? In this world. You know, that already exists. They mentioned Black Spire Outpost or something to be more specific, but still, I mean, that was like awesome. And then we got Kessel in live action for the first time, which has been mentioned for years. And let me look up exactly. I think it was A New Hope where Kessel was mentioned. Yeah, A New Hope. It has been in Star Wars since 1977 and never once was in live action until this movie. They did a perfect job. They did a perfect job. I mean, it looks like it's just so great, you know? It's so great for a slaver planet. As awful as that sounds, it just works so great. All the water and liquids are toxic. You know, they're buried in this little cave. All the technology's rusted and old and falling apart. You know, they're mining for, you know, coaxium, for like a crystal. Like, it all just fits perfectly, you know? And then you see all these major events that have been teased and talked about in the original trilogy, like Han getting the Falcon, Han doing the Kessel Run, right? Like, all these kinds of things. The Han dice and the meaning of that and why they're there. Han meeting Chewbacca becoming the co-pilot. Han and Lando's weird relationship, you know, where it's like this kind of frenemy kind of deal where they're always kind of competing against each other, you know, and then after Empire they finally settle things, but still, you know, it's this sense of competition. And you know, I think all that, it's just incredible because you're like, oh, this is how this happened. Or how Han got his last name. You know, I know in Legends he has, like, parents, he has a whole backstory, but I feel the way he got his name in Solo was honestly made even more sense than any of the Legend stuff. Because if you didn't know, in Revenge of the Sith, George Lucas was going to have Han be in that movie as a little boy, basically surviving on Kashyyyk with the Wookiees. Obviously, that got scrapped, but that was a concept. And I feel like, okay, well, he clearly doesn't have parents or anyone here, right? And it's like, I don't know, I feel like that adheres to George's vision more, right? Because that was in a direct George movie, a concept that he went over. And, you know, having him kind of be on his own, I feel like fits his character even more and gives that character even more power. I don't think it takes away from Han at all that he has no one. I feel like that makes him even more crazy of a character because it shows this guy has gotten through his life, been through all this shit on his own. Like, he has not had any help, you know, other than again, this is never mentioned, the Force, you know, is he's given these talents, he's given these abilities that give him purpose, you know, that's all the Force, that's all God, right? So that's a really cool way of, you know, there's this sense of destiny in Solo, and there's this one shot where you pan over his eye line with him looking into hyperspace for the first time, right? Like, there's all these things, or even the opening titles where it's like, I'm a young man who wants to fly among the stars, right? Like, all that, it's like, come on, like, that is destiny, and destiny derives from God, derives from Jesus, which in Star Wars is the Force. You know, it's like, it's there. And it takes him a long time before he even believes it, right? Because he's been stuck in these nasty environments with no Jedi, with nothing in them. You know, it's like being in life with no churches. If you didn't have a church, you know, imagine when you were young and you didn't have a church, or at any point you didn't have a church, or you didn't know what that was like. You know, you wouldn't be able to experience God's full greatness. You wouldn't be able to learn about God. You wouldn't be able to understand that, you know, and Han never had that. And then once he started seeing it, he started believing it because it was real. And that's like an atheist going to church for the first time. They're seeing and learning and experiencing these things religiously, and slowly over time it's like, well, this is the truth, and I just haven't had it because I haven't been exposed to it, whatever. And God, of course, will give you feelings and he'll give you signs to help you guide towards things. But some people are stupid and they brush them off, and they're like, oh, it's just luck, it's just coincidence. And then Han finally realizes that that is something, in Return of the Jedi. So it's just sick, man. And that's one part of Han that I've always had God, I've always had Jesus, I've always fully believed in it. There's never been a moment where I'm like, oh, I don't know, like some of those weird people out there. And it's like, that's one part of Han that I don't really relate to, is I've always had God and Jesus with me. I've always had, the Force with me. So then it's like, am I more Kyle Katarn? Because that's like, he's pretty much Jedi Han Solo. But no, Han and I are weirdly similar. I don't know what it is. Especially later on when he is more attuned religiously and more of a good person, that's even more where we are like, yeah. But still, yeah, Solo is so underrated, and it's so annoying and upsetting to see how badly it flopped, because it flopped really bad. Disney lost millions because due to that movie. Why? Because of The Last Jedi, and everyone's like, hell no, I'm not going to see another Star Wars movie like 5 months after that disgusting mess that I just saw in theaters, right? Like, that's just logical. Why would you do that? I think it was 6 months. Yeah, December to May. That was like 6 months. Most people are like, hell no, I'm not going to sit through that. Are you kidding me? Like, I just saw I don't trust these people. I'm not giving them $20. Like, hell no. That's what everyone thought. That is why it flopped. It did not flop because it's a bad movie. That's not how movies work. There's a lot of bad movies that make lots of money, and it's like, that's not how it works. It's because it's track record, right? People, you have to go be interested in the movie to see it. And everyone loves Han Solo. So that's not like a random character. It's not like if they did some show on a movie on Fennec Shand, right? Like, this is Han Solo, dude. And then Disney's like, oh, it's because there's a different actor for Han. It's like, no, dude, it's because no one trusts you after the decision you made with 8 and how you bastardized that character. So they're like, I don't want to watch another one of my favorite characters get destroyed. And that's statistically proven. It is the decline in Star Wars after that movie was crazy, and fuck. Like, how are we this dumb to think, oh, and by the way, Alden Ehrenreich does an incredible job as Han Solo in that movie. And I want to see more of him. Honestly, dude, he is Han Solo now. Because Harrison Ford doesn't want to deal. I love him, but obviously, he's a legend. But he doesn't want to do Star Wars anymore. That's very, very clear. So I think, just out of respect for him, don't make him do it. Don't make him do mocap bullshit. Get Alden, because he does great. He's still young-ish, I think he's in his 40s, right? Yeah, he's got a lot of years on him. Have him be Han, and he did a great job. He's even younger than that. He's 35. This guy is Han. So, like, I remember watching him and thinking, like, wow, this guy... And I was a kid, and I thought that he was Han Solo. Like, he gives the vibe. Sure, he doesn't sound like Harrison Ford, but he acts like him really, really well. He acts like a young Han Solo perfectly. He looks like a young Han Solo too, right? Like, it just works. I'm like, what are we doing, guys? Like I want more Han Solo. Period. I want more Han Solo. I don't care if it's in a Solo 2 or not, which I'd love a Solo 2, which they're probably not going to do because they're dumb and they don't realize that the reason why Solo flopped was because of The Last Jedi. I want more Han Solo in anything. I want more Han Solo. And it has to be done well. Obviously, that's always the number one thing, is it has to be done well. But I would love, personally, to get more Han Solo because, believe it or not, he is not some ultra present figure in Star Wars. He's in the original trilogy. He's in Solo. That's it. And he's in Battlefront 2. Those are his only appearances in like media. It's like you come on, to a character that iconic, he should be in it more. We should see more of him. I'd love to know what that job was that he was going to on Tatooine. Like what was that? It's like I want to know about that. I'd love to know about that. And the question of could this be like, I don't know, what the hell was it? What was Jabba putting together, right? It's like that you can't leave me with that and then go, "Oh yeah, Solo's bad. We're not going to do another one." Like, are you fucking kidding me? Or Kira going to Darth Maul, yeah. And I feel like now we might get that because, Son of Dathomir, not Son of Dathomir, Jesus. Great comic, by the way. Maul Shadow Lord is coming out, and that's about that era-ish. So maybe we'll get kind of a explanation there. But for sure, I want to figure out Han's side of things, too. We're probably going to get Kira's side of things, and we need to get Han's, too. And Han's was, like, really cool. And how he's going to start doing contracts and being with these different clientele. I don't know. It's just like, I want more Han Solo. Please, Disney, please give me more Han Solo, bro. Like, we don't need another show about a random group of characters or one of your side characters. I don't give a fuck. Give me more Han Solo. Okay? I'm not asking a lot. I'm asking the obvious. I'm not asking you. I'm not an idiot. I'm not like, give me an Anakin Skywalker trilogy or whatever the fuck. It's like he had 6 movies, bro, with a perfect arc. Sure, we could have like a standalone or some like that, but we can have a trilogy. That's fucking crazy. I'm not dumb. I'm not dumb. I'm not like, oh, we need a Luke Skywalker trilogy. It's like, sure, a show about the Jedi Academy with Luke in it would be great, but a trilogy, bro? Luke had 3 movies, and he developed and got to the point, So it's like, I guess that's not true. That's not true. Luke, you could do a trilogy, because there's a lot of time after Jedi that you could have him learn. Yeah, that's not true. I take that back. That was dumb. Luke, you could do a trilogy on. But you know what I mean. I'm not like one of those idiots. Darth Nihilus TV show. Bro doesn't even talk. What do you mean Darth Nihilus TV show? The fuck? Or Darth Revan and this old Republic. It's like, dude, you already have that, dumbass. Like, I'm not asking for anything that we already have. I want new stories on Han Solo that have not been done before, that fit George's vision, and that are fun, that are cool. That's what I want. Really and truly, that is what I want. I want that. I want a Luke Jedi Academy thing. What else do I want in Star Wars? I want the Old Republic MMORPG on console and with a single player fucking control system type of game. You make it single player. What else? I think a like Jedi Hunt series would be cool, where it's like Vader having to manage all the Inquisitors. That would be cool. We haven't seen that before. We got bits of it in the comics, but that is a big part of Star Wars, where we've seen the rebellion side of that, but I'd love to see the other side. What else? Yeah, like a thing. What could we do? Oh yeah, a new sequel trilogy. I know that's kind of not going to happen, but I would love that. It would kind of be weird with recasted people, but at least it would be hopefully a better story than the shit we got. That would be cool. Boba Fett, you could do tons of things with, because he's barely in anything. You could give him a lot. I love more Boba. I think like an Obi-Wan thing with him kind of more in the Force realm and training with Qui-Gon, whatever, that would be cool. But it would, again, have to be done really well. Deborah Chow and Joby Harold couldn't be present. I think like a mini... that might be weird. Maybe. A mini series of Yoda on Dagobah discovering, the tree and kind of learning about it and deepening himself in the Force in the first little bit of his isolation. That would be cool. I don't know, some more just fucking fun Star Wars stories with just make it Star Wars. I don't know, with new-ish characters, not BS characters like the Acolyte, but new characters that are cool that, also it feels like it's in the same universe as George's 6 movies. It's not like fucking Skeleton Crew that doesn't even feel part of Star Wars. Jesus Christ. Again, not a terrible show writing-wise, but Star Wars-wise, it does not feel like Star Wars at all. What else, bro? We're getting the Maul show, which is insane and a miracle. Goodness gracious. That is one that fans have been asking for that we're actually getting, which is cool. I'd like something about some kind of series or movie or whatever. More of a series. This is more of a TV show thing, but like a look at the Galactic Civil War on the Empire side. That would be very cool. And it would have to be done really well, but I would love that. That would be awesome. I think like a Secrets of the Sith show with like Dooku and Palpatine. Because we know that they explored some aspects of the dark side and Old Republic stuff during the Clone Wars. But to really dive into that and like go into like, just do a series about them and their kind of journey through that. That would be sick. Like, I could keep going, bro. I can spit as many ideas. Grievous. Grievous. Easy show, or even fucking trilogy, to be honest, right there. Grievous is usable. He is a very usable boy. That boy is very usable. You need to use him. Jango Fett. What else? What else? Like I'm literally just giving you ideas that would make you money right now. And I'm just spitting them, bro. Rogue Squadron. You could do a non-shit Rogue Squadron movie with Luke, with Wedge, with all the characters. Do a Rogue Squadron thing. And it's like Star Wars Top Gun. And I know that they made the Rogue Squadron thing, but sure, that Rogue Squadron wasn't going to have fucking Luke and Wedge in it. It wasn't. It was going to be some bullshit thing. Make an actual cool Rogue Squadron. We already got Cad Bane's origin story, which is really cool. Fuck it. A spaghetti western in Star Wars. That would be sick. A movie. Kind of like Good, Bad, and the Ugly, but with like Star Wars characters. That would be fucking awesome. What else, bro? And it's like we've gotten aspects of that, but to get a full thing would be cool. Yeah, I mean, I could give you more, but mainly Han Solo, please. Han Solo, Luke Skywalker, please. And Darth Vader, bro. Those are the 3 characters. Just please, that's all I want right now. Just those 3 characters, bro. And if they can be very properly used, Anakin or Obi-Wan or Yoda. They would have to be very, very, very carefully used. Very. But yeah. So that's really it. Just wanted to glaze Solo because I fucking love that movie and I love Han Solo. So please, Disney, please, please, Han Solo. Please, Lucasfilm. Please, Han Solo. Please do his character well. Get Ron Howard back. I mean, you have like a D1 cinema legend making a Star Wars movie who's a friend of George Lucas, bro. Like, give me more of that. And by the way, Lawrence Kasdan and his brother wrote that movie. And you know what else Lawrence Kasdan wrote? Return of the fucking Jedi. So, him and George wrote that movie. So it's like, hey, you just got the crew, bro. You got the crew. And John Williams, like, what the fuck? And I love how no one acknowledges Solo. It's so annoying. I'm like, bro, you had the crew. The Star Wars Legacy crew. And you're all like, Dave Filoni. Fuck no, bro. Give me Ron Howard and Lawrence Kasdan. Like, come on. Fucking hell. Anyways, leave a like, subscribe, and share, and I will see you in the next video. May the Force be with you always. Bye-bye.